Welcome to another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast here from the Snowdon Deli. I'm Aaron Rand from CJD along with Bill Brownstein of the Montreal Gazette and our very special guest today, Tony Marinaro. Tony, welcome.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, host of the Sick Podcast, contributor on 98.5 FM, TVA Sports, and basically the person who knows probably more about the Montreal Canadiens than anybody unless they're with the Montreal Canadiens. So,
and even maybe
possibly more.
No, I don't think so. I don't think I know more than anyone who's with the Montreal Canadiens, and there's other people in the city that know their fair share about the Canadiens too, but I'm very happy to be here, and it took two things. One, for Bill to tell me there's smoked meat at the Snowdon Deli.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And the other, obviously, to hang out with you guys. Because,
we appreciate you being here. I know you're busy. I will point out, by the way, I'm wearing my Montreal Canadiens watch.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
By the way, has not told regular time since 1993.
Wow.
But suddenly today, it started telling the right time. So
it's a miracle.
That's a sign of something. It is.
I don't.
So Tony, the city's going gaga with the Canadiens. Yeah. They're dreaming the big dream. They're seeing Stanley Cup parades. Are you as excited as all of them, or bring us down to reality?
I am excited. It doesn't mean that the Stanley Cup parade is going to happen this year
or next.
They have a young team.
Yeah.
They have the youngest team in the National Hockey League, but they have a very exciting team. I was born in 72, so I have few memories of the great 70s, right? I could remember a couple of moments in the 79 playoffs, but after that, I mean, I'm someone who grew up with the Cup in 86 and the Cup in 93, but there have been a lot of bad years in between and since then. When was the last time you could ask anybody, any Montreal Canadiens fan, who do you think will be the best Montreal Canadiens player in 3 years? And that if you would ask 5, 6, 7 people, you might get 5, 6, 7 different answers. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Good point.
That's how good this team is right now. You might get Suzuki, you might get Caulfield, you might get Slavkovsky, you might get Demidov, you might get Lane Hudson, and who knows, in a couple of years from now, you might get a Michael Hage or a Zarowski, because there's other prospects that are coming too. They're good, they're young, they're exciting, and the best thing, I think the best thing that Jeff Molson did after buying the team back for $575 million, and now it's worth $4 billion, was actually hiring Gordon, who hired Hughes, deciding to go with two people to run the hockey operations, Gordon and Hughes, who hired Marty St. Louis. He brought in his people. The Canadiens are in the hands of very, very competent people right now, and that's the number one reason to be optimistic.
Can I? That's funny you say that. I'm thinking when Marty St. Louis came here, obviously a great player in his day. There was some question about, is he coaching material? Is that the right guy? So you're giving them credit for bringing him in. Yeah. What did they see in him you think perhaps others didn't?
First of all, they weren't afraid to make a mistake if it wasn't going to work out. In hockey, too many people are afraid to make a mistake, so they bring back the recycled coach over and over and over again.
The Todd Tortorella syndrome.
That, mind you, is doing pretty well.
Yeah,
they had a great relationship with Marty. Marty saw hockey the way they saw hockey. And also the timing was perfect. They decided they were going the way of a rebuild. A rebuild could mean 3, 5, 7, 9, and sometimes even 10 years of pain. And they said, really, what do we have to lose? He'll come in, he'll bring in a brand of offensive hockey. Whether, even if we lose, it doesn't matter. Everyone expects us to lose. But the players are going to grow. He's going to grow with them. And you know what? At one point, if he can't take us to where we want to go, we can part ways. But let's just see what happens, because what do we have to lose? And really, they had nothing to lose. Yeah. Everyone expected them to lose anyway. I don't think they expected to make the playoffs in year 3, which is what they did last year. And this year in year 4, there's an expectation that if they get through Tampa, they can go very far. But getting through Tampa is going to be a huge challenge.
Well, let's talk Tampa, because that's what it's going to be. They played him before this year. Not that it matters. In regular season, they split 4 games. You go from the youngest team in the NHL to one of the older teams in the NHL. But when I say older, that's a team with a lot more experience as well. Although, from what I remember, Tampa's not done all that well in the playoffs the last couple of years. If you had an ideal matchup for this Canadiens team, would it have been Tampa or would it have been Buffalo? Who would it have been?
Boston.
No, I don't think it would have been Tampa, because everyone's talked about how great the Canadiens' offense is, right?
Right.
And you take a look at NHL.com today and you realize one thing. Tampa scored more goals. than the Canadiens. Oh, so now all of a sudden the offense is it. And what's more impressive, they both finished with the same amount of points. Some will say, well, they're even. They're not even. Because the Canadiens, Nick Suzuki didn't miss a game. Caulfield missed one game.
Yeah.
Slavkovsky didn't miss a game. Demidov didn't miss a game. Lane Hudson didn't miss a game. Dobson missed 2 games. Matheson missed 4 games. With all due respect to the Goolies, the Docks, the Evans, the Lineys of this world, the Canadiens lost complementary players due to injury. Tampa Bay, Victor Hedman has missed 48 games.
Big loss.
Ryan McDonough missed 30-something games. Kucherov missed 6 games. Cirelli and Point missed about 10 games or 11 games. Gensel, I think, missed a couple of games. No, it's Hagel. Hagel missed, I think, about a good 7, 8, 10 games as well. So their best players have missed a lot of games. So if you say to yourself, if they would have been in the lineup, are they finishing with the same amount of points as the Canadiens?
Sure.
And I don't think so, right? So that's the big difference. Tampa Bay is better. You asked me who the ideal matchup would have been. I don't know if there is an ideal matchup. There's so much parity in the National. I think Boston would be great. There's a history between the two organizations. The Canadiens traditionally get up for the Boston Bruins. That could have been a good matchup, I think, but there's no easy matchup.
So you don't see the Canadiens going further than the first round?
I didn't say that. I'll answer that in a second. What I don't like is I don't like the playoff format. And for example, Philadelphia is playing Pittsburgh in the Battle of Pennsylvania. Yeah. They're the 7th and 8th best teams in the East. They shouldn't be playing each other.
I agree.
So Tampa Bay is going to play Montreal. You know, one is the 2nd team in the Atlantic. Another one is the 3rd team in the Atlantic. And one of those teams is going to get eliminated right away. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, true.
And Buffalo, Boston, a pretty good team is going to get eliminated there as well. And Gary Bettman at the GM meetings probably about a month ago, he was asked about the playoff format because Bill Guerin, the general manager of the Minnesota Wild, he objects to it. He doesn't like it. His team is going up against the Dallas Stars. His team had a great season. One great team is going to get eliminated. Yeah. And he said to Gary Bettman, Gary, I'm sorry, I don't like it. And Gary Bettman said, well, we pride ourselves on having the best first-round playoffs of any sports league in North America. Okay, I think he's right. But aren't the playoffs supposed to get better and better as you go instead of getting worse and worse? So I don't like that. Now, I think the Canadiens and Tampa Bay, I think they're going the limit. I think they're going 7 games. I think that's how good Tampa is. I think that's how good Montreal is. Am I going to give you a prediction right now? It's not because I want to take the easy way out. Because my heart can tell you right now, Montreal, my head can tell you that I think home ice advantage and experience could be a difference. And Tampa Bay should win if they host Game 7, which they will. But once it gets to Game 7, a penalty here, a high stick there, a goalie decides to get hot, anything can happen. It really is going the limit, I think.
Well, that's what you point out, goalie. They've got a superior goalie. I'm sorry. He comes alive. We're in trouble. And there's the Dobson effect. He'll be out for, I'm guessing, this first round.
We don't know. The Canadiens said that he'll be out for at least 2 weeks. For me, if Dobson was healthy, I might have told you this morning, the Canadiens are going to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. There's no doubt in my mind. Really? But he's not healthy.
He's one guy.
We'll see what happens. He logs a lot of minutes.
He
plays 23 to 25 minutes a game. He's Mike Matheson's defense partner. He's on the ice versus the other team's best players. He did an amazing job on Kucherov twice in the last couple of weeks of the regular season. He's on the penalty kill. He's the leading shot blocker in the National Hockey League. He's like having another goalie.
Right.
He's like having another goalie. So without him, it'll be tough. But once again, I think it's going 7 games for many, many reasons. Because as much as I'm here today talking to you about how good Tampa is, I bet you in Tampa they're having a podcast right now, not as good as this one, of course.
Of course not.
And they're talking about how good and how dangerous the Canadiens are. For a long time, or during the season, some people say, well, the Canadiens are a one-line team. You shut down Suzuki, Caulfield, and Slavkovsky, you beat the Canadiens. How are you going to shut them down? They're the best line in the National Hockey League. There's a debate between a very good line in Dallas with Wyatt Johnston and Mikko Rantanen and Jason Robertson. They're arguably the best line in the National Hockey League. They scored 110 goals, this line together. And, I went to watch a game in Tampa back on the 28th. By the way, I'm going to the series in Tampa. I leave Saturday. I went to watch a game on the 28th of December. The Lightning beat the Canadiens by a score of 5-4 in a shootout. The Lightning were up by a score of 4-1, I think, in the third period. Canadiens came back. Slavkovsky that night, who was playing on a second line with Kapanen and Demidov, was unbelievable. John Cooper at the end of the game said, this Slavkovsky kid, his fourth season in the National Hockey League, but I get the feeling like he's been in the National Hockey League for 10 years. This kid's a superstar, right? So they have a lot of superstars. Yuri Slavkovsky is one of the best power forwards in the league. He's 22 years old. He finished with, 30
Look
goals.
at the grief they got for drafting him.
Yeah, he wasn't the popular pick at the time, but he told everyone, he said, I might not be everyone's pick, but I hope you'll fall in love with me. And I spoke with Kent Hughes a couple of weeks ago, and I touched on that story with him, and I said, Slavkovsky, the decision to start him here as an 18-year-old. And before he said that, he says, first things first, the reason why we drafted him is after meeting with him and talking with him, engaging his character, we determined that he would be able to live with the pressures of playing in Montreal and the pressures of being a first pick for the Montreal Canadiens. So they got it right, for sure. They got it right for drafting him. They got it right for playing him here as an 18-year-old, because sometimes those players are not ready. Cole Caulfield, how many players scored 50 goals this year? 2. He's a superstar. Nick Suzuki, how many players picked up more than 100 points? I mean, a Montreal Canadiens haven't had a player to hit 100 points since Naslin in 1986. They hadn't had a player hit 50 goals since Richer in 1990. They haven't had a power forward since probably, I don't know who.
And look at Hudson.
And Hudson just tied Larry Robinson's record for the most assists in a season. They have great players.
So where are we lacking
hold on a
here?
sec. I think a lot of people hearing this will agree.
Yeah.
Great players. You run down stats. Stats don't lie. But then I look at the last game the Canadiens played against Tampa, and the thing I took away from it was Tampa's a physical team.
Yes.
They're going to hit you. We do not have a big team. It may be fast, but we don't have a lot of big guys. Over the course of a 7-game series, doesn't that work against us?
That's my concern. My concern is Tampa are more battle-tested. They've bowed out in the playoffs in the first round the last 3 years.
Yeah.
The year before that, they lost in the Cup final. The 2 years before that, they won the Stanley Cup. They've been there. They know what it takes to win, and they know that if they rough up the Canadiens are going to get away from their game. To be a great team, you have to be willing to adjust and play any kind of hockey. Are the Canadiens going to be able to play that kind of hockey over and win 4 times in 7 games? That's going to be tough. We know that they're going to stand up for each other. They showed us that the other night when they played Tampa Bay. They'll stand up for each other, but they're going to get run down. The way you can negate other teams trying to bully you is either to fight back or to have a lethal power play. If that team knows that if they're going to take a penalty against you, that you're going to score, they're probably going to do it less. So here's the things the Canadiens have to do. Number 1, if Tampa imposes their physicality on the Montreal Canadiens, the Canadiens power play has to score. It was a good power play in the regular season.
Not so much at the end.
It was not a great power play in the last couple of weeks. I'm going to give the Canadiens a benefit of the doubt and say that their power play will be very good in the playoffs. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I believe, because there were so many players looking for milestones down the stretch, they got away from their game and away from their power play a little bit. Having said that, the Lightning have one of the best penalty kills in the National Hockey League. So that's going to be a challenge. Number 2, when Tampa played here a couple of weeks ago, and Corey Perry was going after Lane Hudson and trying to intimidate him, and circling the Canadiens' goal and trying to get into Dobish's head, Jack Guy was trying to do the same thing to Vasilevsky, and Jack Guy was going to talk to Perry. I don't think Jack Guy should do something like that, and we don't know if he's going to play yet. Let's see. But if he does, or if it isn't him, or it's Struble, or it's Josh Anderson, who's a forward, what they got to do is they got to do this. First of all, it'll be tough to get into Vasilevsky's head. He's been there. He's done that. He's battle tested. What they got to do is if Tampa Bay are going after Montreal's best players, a guy like Anderson or Struble or Jack Guy have to go up to Nikita Kucherov, who's Tampa Bay's best player and one of the best in the world, and they have to say to him, you're going to tell your team to calm down, because if they're not going to come down, it's you that we're coming after. And then you can't just say it. You got to do it.
In theory, that's great. You don't really think that's going to happen? Or is that something the coach will tell them if you have a Corey Perry, as you just described it, Tony, going after Lane Hudson, or whoever he's going to be going after? Marty St. Louis will go to Jack Guy and say, hey, or Josh Anderson and say, you know what? Go up to Kucherov and let him know. Just the way you described, you actually see that happen?
I don't know if Marty St. Louis is going to go up to them and tell them that, but I think they're smart enough to know that that's probably the best thing to do. And if Jack Guy and Struble haven't figured it out because they have less experience than a guy like Anderson, Anderson will tell them, guys, this is what we have to do.
You point out Jack Guy, he's an enigma. I mean, basically he can, stand up for you, but at the same time he could, cost you a game.
I don't think he's an enigma, Bill, because he is who he is. He plays on a team that have so many very, very good defensemen, right? You take a look at Mike Matheson. He's a first-round pick, drafted. You take a look at Dobson, he's a first-round pick. You take a look at Gooley, he's a first-round pick. You take a look at Hudson, he was drafted in the second round, 62nd, because he's 5'9", 162 pounds. But everyone looks back, he could have very well been the first-round pick when the Canadiens drafted the first pick overall when the Canadiens drafted Slafkovsky. He's that good, okay? Jack Guy was never drafted. He came up several years ago. He played for Hamilton in the OHL. Michael Landauer was the owner of the team. Michael Landauer had ownership of the Montreal Canadiens. He had a really good run with Hamilton. He said to the Canadiens, hey, I have this kid. Why don't we give him a shot at camp? Let's give him a look. And they gave him a look. And they had injuries in camp. So right place, right time. They realized they needed someone that had his nastiness. He makes the team. A couple of years later, we're seeing that the fact that Jack Guy only spent about 17 games or whatever it is in the American Hockey League, it's hurting him. Others are progressing in Laval, and at one point, they're going to pass him on the depth chart. He's a limited defenseman, but he has his utility. He's got a great shot. He's getting better and better in terms of timing his hits. He's obviously very intimidating. If he can play with more discipline and improve on his reads and his overall vision of the game, he could be very useful. Okay. If they're patient enough to be able to work with him a little bit more because others are coming, he's useful.
But the way you describe it now, you mentioned Noah Dobson. We don't know how long he's going to be out. Defense-wise.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
If he comes back and the series is tied, the Canadiens are going to win the series.
Okay.
So if he comes back...
Broken thumb.
And I hear you. Broken thumb, yes. But very good stick. He's got a big wingspan. He covers a lot of ice. He's very smart.
But how much does this hurt them not to have him? And that's what my question was going to be, defense-wise, right? You got to call up a guy. You have to fill a hole. Yeah. And it's a team like Tampa. That's tough.
Yeah, it hurts because now everyone's in a different chair. Who's going to be Mike Matheson's defense partner, right? So we'll have to wait and see. I think it's going to be Gooley. Gooley and Matheson were together at one point. And obviously, I think what you're going to have maybe two more limited defensemen on your third pair, and they're going to try and pick and choose the spots where they're going to put them on the ice. Yeah. The disadvantage will be the fact that they don't have the last line change by starting on the road. And at that point, John Cooper, who's a great coach, he's going to try and take advantage of that by having his best players on the ice when the Canadiens have their third pairing. But at the same time, I can tell you that the Canadiens in the regular season were a better team on the road than they were at home. Exactly. Their power play was much better on the road than it was at home. I think they try and put on too much of a show at home. And this disadvantage of starting on the road may actually work out to their advantage.
There had been a lot of talk that the Canadiens are really lacking a power forward, and before the trade deadline, apparently the team was in on trying to get a certain player here. I think you know who that is. Do you think that where are they really lacking, and who would that player be that they would love to bring over here?
So no team is perfect, obviously. No team, not even the Colorado Avalanche, who are probably the best team in the National Hockey League. The Canadiens have Suzuki with Caulfield and Slafkovsky.
Right.
Suzuki's the playmaker. Caulfield's the goal scorer. Slafkovsky's the everything. He could be the playmaker. He could be the goal scorer. He's the guy who goes into the corners. He's the guy who digs out the puck. He's the guy who makes room for all those other guys. He's the guy who gets his nose dirty. Every line in an ideal world needs a guy like that. You look at the second line, they had Kapanen with Demidov, and they never really had a guy to complete that line. And at one point, they brought Slafkovsky on that line for about 2 months. Then they realized that the first line needed Slafkovsky, so they put Slafkovsky back up. They'll never be able to go out and get another Slafkovsky. Teams that have a Slafkovsky, they don't trade him. Or it's very rare. Colorado had Rantanen. They traded him because there was a contract issue, and they tried to extend with him, and he didn't want so. But it's rare you trade guys like that. What they were looking for was a poor man Slafkovsky. Somebody big, somebody strong, somebody can go into the corners, obviously with a lesser skill set, because it'd be hard to get that kind of package elsewhere. That's what they need. They also need a second-line centerman. It looked like they had it in Kapanen in the first 3 quarters of the season. But like every rookie, or most rookies, in the final month of the season, when there's less space on the ice, when the games get tougher, when they get tighter, when they get more defensive, there's an adjustment period. We're going to see in the playoffs how Kapanen's going to handle it. He might be centering that second line. He might not, because they tried Newhook for the final games of the regular season. If he does, it's going to be a learning moment. Even if he doesn't, it's going to be a learning moment. We'll know at the end of the playoffs if Kapanen has what it takes maybe to be that guy going forward. Most people believe that guy is going to be Michael Hage. The Canadiens wanted to sign him. He's playing in Michigan. They wanted to sign him to bring him with the team, whether he was going to play or not. And he decided to go back to Michigan for another year. So in Michael Hage's case, it's going to be later rather than sooner. The Canadiens could use a second-line centerman right away. They can use a power forward on their second line right away, because by not having that, it's too much pressure on Demidov. At one point, he can be great, he can be skilled, he can be talented. But if he's alone, it's a lot to ask.
So I want to talk about, and Bill brought it up earlier on, you're dealing with a guy in Vasilevsky who's been around.
Yeah.
You talk about playoff experience. But then you look at Jakub Dobeš, which, I think for a lot of Canadiens fans would never have imagined that he would win as many games as he has in a rookie season.
Yeah.
If you have to balance the goalies off here, one against the other, is Dobeš the kind of guy who can win you a series like this?
Any goalie can win you a series in the playoffs if they get hot. It's not always about the best goalie. It's about the goalie who gets hot at the right moment. Clearly, I'd like the Canadiens' chances more if you would inverse the goalies, with all due respect to Jakub Dobeš, right? Vasilevsky's the best in the league. Dobeš could beat him. Those 2 games that they played in the final weeks of the regular season, I know it's not the playoffs, but they played for positioning in the standings. They were unofficially the playoffs. Dobeš did not seem intimidated, not one bit. And he limited Tampa Bay to 2 goals in 2 games. Why? Because he was in a hot moment.
The Corner Booth podcast is brought to you in part by the Snowdon Delicatessen, where we are. 75 years in business, the home of Montreal's greatest smoked meat, plus Carnotzel, potato latkes, and the famous Snowdon Deli party sandwiches. That's the Snowdon Delicatessen.
We talked about Vasilevsky. He won 2 Stanley Cups. The 3rd year he gets to the final, Tampa Bay faces Colorado. Vasilevsky versus Darcy Kemper. A lot of people would say, well, Tampa Bay's going to win. They have the better goalie. They lost. Kemper played great in the final. We've seen in this city, goalies get hot.
Yeah.
We saw Yaroslav Halak in 2010. There's still stop signs all over the city that say Halak instead of Aret. He went into Washington. Washington was a juggernaut back in 2010. They had 50 goal scorers. They had scored 330 some odd goals. They were the number one seed. The Canadiens were the 8th. No one gave the Canadiens a chance. They won that series for many reasons because they blocked a ton of shots. Hammerlick, Spacek, Hal Gill, Josh Georges. They got good performances from their fourth line. They had role players step up. Moore scores the game-winning goal in Game 7. I think in Game 7 they got outshot 42-18 or 20 or something like that. More than double. The scoring chances were 3 times more for Washington. They should have lost that game by 3 goals. They should have lost Game 6 in Montreal by 4 goals. I think Halak made 54 saves or something, right? Goalies win series. Yaroslav Halak won series for the Canadiens. Cristobal Huet did very well for the Montreal Canadiens. Steve Penny.
Oh my God.
Steve Penny, right? Back in the day. He won series for the Montreal Canadiens.
So did guys like Jacques Blount.
Patrick Waugh in 86 as a rookie won the Stanley Cup. Carolina had Martin Gerber in a playoff series versus the Montreal Canadiens. Start. He got hurt after a couple of games. The Canadiens, I think, were up 2-0. Cam Ward comes in. He wins the Stanley Cup. This is where legends are made.
Yeah.
You know, there's an opportunity here. So, having said that,
you could say Vasilevsky, given the last couple of playoff series going back, he didn't come through.
No, he didn't. Mind you, they got eliminated a couple of times by the Florida Panthers, and Bobrovsky was another great goalie. It's funny though. Pierre Maguire joins me on my podcast after every Canadiens game, and last podcast we had together, Pierre told me he would start Fowler instead of Dobish.
Really?
And when Fowler got called up for the second time, his first game back was in Ottawa versus the Senators. It was a big game. The Canadiens had just won the night before with Dobish versus Toronto at home in Montreal. And Fowler stopped 32 of 34. In the last 90 seconds or 2 minutes of the game, Claude Giroux could have had a hat trick. Fowler was unbelievable. At that moment, there are a lot of people that thought that Fowler was going to be the guy in the playoffs for the Canadiens as early as this season. Dobish, to his credit, who won his battle versus Montembeault to be the number 1, ended up winning his battle versus Fowler because he said, no. This kid, I'm not going to give him the net. It's going to be mine. All to say that if Dobish fumbles, it's obviously not a good thing. Maybe Jacob Fowler is going to end up becoming a legend sooner rather than later.
So look, at some point, we're going to have to ask you to kind of make a prediction here. How's this going to play out? What do you see happening, and where does it end up?
It's going to go 7 games. Right. That I'll tell you right away.
And if Dobson comes back, they win.
If Dobson comes back for Game 7, I think the Canadiens will win it. I think the Canadiens will win it because, A, my heart is saying the Canadiens will win it. Yeah. B, it would be unbelievable for the city. C, it would be tremendous for my podcast. But D, it almost seems like this Canadiens team, this year we're seeing a changing of the guard. And it almost seems like Tampa Bay had their time, and it's the Canadiens' time. And look, I could be wrong, but I know I'm going to be right about this. If the changing of the guard doesn't happen this season, it's going to happen next season. I know people, it will. You're seeing it. It's the talent is there. They know the missing pieces that are what they have to do, and they're going to go out and they're going to do it.
But let's not forget Colorado is like unstoppable at this point in time, I think.
Perfect. When was the last time a team finished first overall in the league and they won the cup?
Stanley Cup,
It hardly happens.
But
I think it happened.
Look how strong they are on paper.
Didn't we beat them regular season? They look bad actually at the best.
I think it happened once in the last 15 years or 20 years or so. So Florida last year, they paced themselves. We know what kind of team we are. Not going to kill ourselves down the stretch. Let's pace ourselves. Ended up winning the Stanley Cup. So I think it's open every year. I think it's open this year. There's traditionally teams that there's a number 105. Pierre Maguire brought this up to me. He says, Tony, look at this number 105. If you had the power play and you had the penalty kill and you're 105 higher, traditionally those are the teams that end up winning the Stanley Cup. Now, the Canadiens are, I think, 101 or 102 or something. The Dallas Stars have the highest number. I think they're 108.7, something like that. So that's something to pay attention to. But Minnesota, the team they're going up against, I think is at 105. They're very close. We'll see what happens. I mean, Tampa Bay, the winner of Montreal Tampa will go to the final.
Really?
That's my prediction.
Okay.
Tony, one thing the Oilers, why aren't they at the top? Like, why aren't they winning with that kind of lineup? Well, like, it's not just a goal. I mean, they've got it all on paper.
Wait,
Yeah.
we analyze the Edmonton Oilers now? We're
No,
gonna
I'm
move
just
beyond
curious.
the Canadiens? Or?
I'll give you a very simple answer.
From a Canadian
A
point
couple of
view.
years ago, they lost. Like last year, they lost versus Florida in the final because Florida was clearly better on paper.
Right.
The year before that, it went to Game 7, and they were down 3-0 in that series.
Right.
And they came back 3-3 to their
right.
credit, and they lost Game 7 2-1. In the playoffs, if you don't know how to win a game 2-1, you won't win your rounds and you won't win a Stanley Cup. They don't know how to win that 2-1 game yet. If the game is open,
They win.
it's to their advantage. If the game is tight and there's very few scoring chances, they don't know how to win that game yet.
And they don't have the goal.
And up until now, they haven't had the goaltending or the defense to win those kind of games.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to wrap up. So
Yeah.
I want to go on record. You're taking the Canadiens in 7.
I'll take the Canadiens in 7. And if it happens, the winner of this series, I believe, will go to the Stanley Cup final.
Okay.
On the condition that, obviously, they come out without any injuries.
Healthy.
Because
Okay.
this could be a war.
And who did they play in the Stanley Cup Finals? Colorado? Dallas.
Let's go with Colorado's the easier pick because Dallas could get upset by Minnesota.
Okay. Bill, how many games in this series, Canadiens?
I'm with him 7.
7?
Yeah.
I'm going to take the Canadiens in 5.
Take that bet.
Saying, take the Canadiens in 5.
No, I mean,
I think this is one of the better road teams in the NHL, number one.
Yeah.
I don't think they're intimidated being on the road. I think they lose a game at home, but I think they come back and win, and I think it ends in 5.
Since the Four Nations face-off tournament, about 14 months ago,
Yeah.
the Canadiens have, I believe, the second or third best record in hockey. A bit better than Tampa.
Okay.
interesting.
So
Okay. 7-7, 5. We'll see what happens.
it won't be that much of an upset.
So how much do we give them if they take it in 5?
As you know, we're not allowed to bet here live on the podcast. We can certainly
smoke meat.
Yeah,
Smoke meat.
it's yours. You win
At
anyway.
Snowdon Deli.
Tony Marinaro, thank you so much for
Thank you
joining
for
us.
having
This
me.
has been great. Really appreciate
You're
it.
a legend.
Thanks,
It was an
Tony.
honor.
It was a real
That
You're a
wraps up
legend. It was an
another
honor.
edition
Thank
of the
you.
Corner Booth Podcast. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.